So that tells you, that should tell you alone the confirmation of the Old Testament, especially in Isaiah where we get this from, and it was confirmed by Paul in his writings. And then in Hebrews we have some stuff relating to this, and I put this down here just to remind you, that, when we got into the New Testament era, this is stuff that God had never done before. He had never sacrificed his son before. He sent his son, Yahshua, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross. And he also, in Hebrews here, he talks about those who died in faith. And of course, when in Hebrews here, when they talk about that, Paul is getting, the examples out of the Old Testament. And when we talk about Abraham believed God, and it was imputed unto him for righteousness' sake. Abraham was before the law, but it was imputed unto Abraham for righteousness' sake. Abraham believed God, and God imputed that as righteousness to his account, just like Christians today believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and the sacrifice and what he did on the cross for us. We all believe. And it's imputed unto us for righteousness' sake, just as it was in the days of Abraham when he believed God. It's the same principle. It's not new. It's new when Abraham did it, but it's also something, when you look in the New Testament, this is something that had never occurred before. Now we act, this is such an old thing, and I see people that are Christians, that were Christians who are becoming Muslims. But I see a lot more Muslims who are becoming Christians because the Christians that are Muslims, former Muslims, actually experienced miraculous signs and wonders in their belief, and it convinced them absolutely who the Lord was. But a lot of these lukewarm Christians we got in America, they'll follow any faith because they don't have the Spirit of God. They haven't been fully converted. And this is the real issue we have in America, is because most of the churches have fallen away and the truth is not in them. And so, talking of those who died in faith, verse 13, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Now that comes from faith. You believe in God, and you're being persecuted, you continue to believe, and it costs you a lot. But then they say, well, we're strangers and pilgrims on the earth anyway. For they say such things, declare plainly that they seek a country. And truly, if they had been mindful of that country from whence they came out, he might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is a heavenly, wherefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared for them a city. Now, look at the whole theme between all of it is miraculous. It's what God is doing. Things that has never happened before. The eye has not seen. The ear has not heard. Any of this. O God, beside thee. The Lord's the only one that knew what he was going to do. And this is not, this is after our time. This is after the Christian time. This is after the dispensations, the end of time, and Christ comes and the kingdom's set up and everything. You put all this behind you. You've been changed in an instant because Christ has come. And everything that he has created for us We haven't seen it. And I think that's the one thing that we have to remember. And that's pretty much sets the level. We're in the latter part of Isaiah. And Isaiah's summing it up with, you were a people that had, the only ones that saw that. Israel was the only nation. There was two houses of Israel. But there was 12 tribes. Nobody else had ever seen this stuff. And nobody still hasn't seen it. There's not a nation anywhere that saw what Israel saw on Mount Sinai when they came in and God descended. And Moses went up with to get the plates and be able to give them everything. Isaiah 64:5 says, Thou meetest him that rejoiceth and worketh righteousness, and those that remember thee in thy ways, behold, thou art wroth, for we have sinned. In those is continuance, and we shall be saved. The people who ask this question, it says, Thou meetest him that rejoiceth and worketh righteousness, those that remember thee in thy ways, behold, thou art wroth, for we have sinned. In those is continuance, and we shall be saved. Now, according to Kyle and DeLeach, those who look at this do not regard themselves as worthy of redemption, as their self-righteousness has been so thoroughly put to shame. Well, when you look at where they've been, when we talk about the major miraculous things that happened with Israel, and then you look to see when the house of Judah, now see the house of the northern tribes, what we call Israel, they were carried away captive by the Assyrians. They also were the ones that totally forsook the Lord and sought other gods. Judah, meanwhile, they had, Jerusalem, they had the prophets, they had the Levites, they had the temple, they had everything, and yet they backslid. And so, when you have seen God, the only nation to ever seen God, the God of gods, come down on the mount in fire and smoke, and you see the miracles that he done, and then you fast forward all this time and see that the same group of people who had a history of this, which was so miraculous, nobody had ever seen it, and they were carried away captive for 70 years. They were passing their children through the fire. They were offering offerings unto the queens of heaven. They were dabbling in the Ashtaroth. They were doing a lot of things. And what that goes to show you that, even those who are considered righteous can fall away. In this case, Israel did. Judah did. Both houses did. And so, so here, this is why Kyle and DeLeach says, the people here. Now, he said, who asked the question in 64:5 do not regard themselves. Now see, that thou meetest him that rejoiceth and worketh righteousness, those that remember thee in thy ways, behold, thou art wroth, for we have sinned, and those is continuance, and we shall be saved. Now there's nothing there to me that tells me that that's a question. That's more of a statement to me. And, it's like, whoops, we've sinned. But see, God, forgave Judah for that. After 70 years, they brought them back and they were restored. And so, you have Israel out there battling battles now, and they're not perfect. But see, God isn't done with their redemption. Now, see, one thing Albert Brooks says about that, perhaps there are a few verses in the Bible that have given more perplexity to interpreters than this, and that's this particular verse 5. After all that has been done, the general impression seems to be that it is wholly inexplicable, without meaning, as certainly is our translation. In other words, you have two things here. The fact that God will meet them who seek him and rejoice in him and work righteousness. He will meet those who remember him and follow his ways. But yet, the house of Israel, who was supposed to do that, and you can even put in Christians today, thou art wroth. Why? Because in spite of everything, they sinned. And despite everything, in those is continuance, and we shall be saved. Now see, if you continue in the wickedness, you're not going to be saved. But the thing of it is that when we look at what God has done through Christ, Christians today are saved by faith through grace. And if they commit error, they can ask God to forgive them, and God will forgive them. And so many people, even today, think that, once saved, always saved, everything's fine, but you got to walk in the ways of God. And so here we have the phrase, thou meetest him that rejoiceth. And it's translated by a translator by Jensenius. Thou makest peace with him who rejoices to do justice. That is, with the just and upright man thou art in league, and you delight in him. Well, remember the days of Elijah, when Elijah slew the prophets of Baal. Actually, God did, but Elijah was there right in the middle of it, and Jezebel was going to kill him for it. So he ran up, it took him quite a time, but he went up into a cave far away, and God met him there, and he told the Lord, he says, there's nobody left in Israel. I alone am left who believes. And God told Elijah, he says, I have 7,000 that have not bowed the knee to Baal. And so even though it looked like everybody was following the things that Jezebel wanted, there was 7,000 Jews that had nothing to do with her. And so what did God do? Well, he protected them. Matter of fact, in the first part of Isaiah, Chapter 3, God tells Isaiah, tell the righteous it shall be well with him, for he shall eat the fruit of his doings. Tell the wicked it will be ill. Ill. In other words, not very good. For you will eat the fruit of your doings too, and your doings are wicked. So you ain't going to do very good. Behold, thou art wroth. For we have sinned, and those is continuance, and we shall be saved. And Colin DeLeach here say that they do not regard themselves as worthy of redemption, as their self-righteousness has been so thoroughly put to shame. And I agree. And anybody with any kind of a conscience, if you're supposed to be serving God, and you're out there passing your children through the fire, unless you're really, really blinded and you think that's okay, it's ridiculous. Anybody would, well, that's wrong. But see, we can look at America today, too, and we have a lot of people that have problems with understanding what wickedness is.